give me a chance to come on and tell you a bit more about myself and why I'm running for chairman. Just really briefly, my family's from India originally. I was born in Denmark. I told this to Ross the other day. He said, "Is that little place down the road from Orangeburg?" I said, "No, this little place across the way from Sweden. This is the real Denmark." Then we lived in Canada for a long time, 23 years. We lived in South Carolina now 15 years. What's interesting is that India, Denmark, and Canada were all socialist-leaning, states in some ways, and we didn't really know at that time, but we had experiences that made us kind of, scratch our heads. And looking back, we kind of recognized why we are Republicans now. But in Denmark, my mother was really young. She had a neighbor who had, gotten pregnant, and my mom at that time, in the early 70s, being, just unwed, pregnant, she was saying, "What are you going to do?" So the government has to be set with housing, I've got a stipend, those other things. And then in Canada, we had a restaurant. And, if you've been in the restaurant business, it's a really tough business. And we had someone quit her job. And she had met with a social worker, and she said that she'd actually make more money being on welfare, and she actually had subsidized housing as well in Canada. So they actually quit the job, moved to another city because she'd actually make more money that way. And that was really bizarre to us that you actually quit a paying job because you get more money somewhere else. So my family, we have two businesses here in the Midlands, one in Lexington County, one in Kershaw County. We run those 7 days a week. My parents from the 60s, they run those every single day. My dad still works for the same Canadian corporation that transferred us down here. So he's been there for 35 years. He works in Canada Monday through Friday now, and then he's here on the weekends. That actually just happened 6 weeks ago. 15 years ago, they transferred him to run their South Carolina plant, and 6 weeks ago, they called him and said, "Why don't you help run our Canadian operation now?" So hopefully he's not going to do that too long, because he also on weekends works at our family business in running the hotel. So he's, they work 7 days a week, really long hours. My brother's a doctor. He went to medical school at USC, and he's a general surgeon. And, so the reason I was running for chairman is because I really see the things that we should be doing, and really the key thing is to make our party relevant to the business community and the citizens of South Carolina. I'll give you an example here. If you look at this sheet here, the governor basically is asked for a regulatory review task force. So they want to look at regulations affecting the business community. And we have so many smart people around this room. We have an insurance guy, we have an accountant, we have some in the medical community, where we should be able to put our standing government reform committee. If I was elected chairman, the first thing I want to do is have a standing government reform committee where we are able to look at things that affect the business community at the county level, the state level, and nationally. So let me give an example here. They basically want recommendations by May 15th, and our convention's April 13th. So if I was elected chairman, Monday the 15th, we're all going to be saying we'll get our taxes done. But the 16th we'll be done. We're going to have our taxes filed. But for 4 weeks, we can meet every week and say who has experience with LLR, who has experience with DHEC, who has experience with DOR. And we can look at these regulations. I'll give you like a really small example. As a small business owner, I have my own consulting business. If I ever get a letter from the government, I always look and see what date they wanted some action by, and I just put the letter aside. They just don't have time to deal with some things they ask for. And so if there's a notice, for example, that says that you have to respond within 7 days, a small change saying 7 days to 10 business days. That gives you 2 weeks. That might be just the amount of time you need as a business owner to respond. So if we could put together a government reform committee and all of us can meet every week and have a set of amendments, we can say, well, here's different regs with LLR or DHEC. We're making ourselves relevant to the business community. If we can meet with the governor, present her our recommendations, have a little press release out, have a story in the Lexington County Chronicle, that's an example where a small business owner reads the paper and says, well, okay, our county GOP put together a government reform committee, we put together amendments to regulations, and there's a, LLR, recognize something there that affects my business. They can see how we're becoming relevant to what they do every day. So one of the things we look at a government reform committee could be looking at the proposed tax raise here by the county council, making sure we understand what that proposal is, how it's going to affect us, going over everything and having that one-page synopsis. That's an example where we have something at the county level with the regulations. We have something at the local level here, what comes with our taxes. And at the national level, I have two ideas I spoke to some of you about already. I mentioned, we talk about outreach to young people. You get to deduct part of your student loan interest every year. But when you make above a certain amount of money, that student loan interest actually phases out. So you actually lose it. The irony is that you've probably gone to school to make more money, to improve your career opportunities, and the government takes this deduction away from you. So my idea is that we can go to Tim Scott in the Senate, Joe Wilson in the House, Joe Wilson sits in the Education Committee and say, why don't you introduce legislation to remove that phase out of the deduction? So the message is to a young person is we as Republicans want to put more money in your pocket rather than have you send it to Washington. So that's an example. We can talk about liberty and freedom, but we actually have to have examples of how it affects someone's lives. Another example is reaching out to women voters, which is really a critical block for us in the future. I mentioned that you can deduct a small portion of your child care expenses, but only if you've gone to a provider that the government designates. And my idea is that we should have that removed, so basically you as a mom can deduct your child care expenses on the provider you choose, not who the government chooses. So again, we're talking about relevance to our everyday lives. And what I want to do is go over this presentation real quick. I just want to talk to you all about, seen this already? Yeah. Just kind of our financial picture from the federal point of view, and what we should be talking about as far as balancing the budget and our finances, and then about our demographics. So the very first slide says America living beyond its means. There's a lot of zeros there, but I want you to look at the under the second part. It says American family budget using the same numbers above. This is actually what our federal budget looks like. You can see that there's $21,700 coming in, $38,200 in expenses. The balance, that difference, $16,500, is put on the credit card. But the credit card already had a balance of $142,710. Now the super committee that put those cuts that you're hearing about, the sequester those cuts, the amount of cuts at that time only amounted to be $385. So if we put this to an average family in Lexington County and say, can you make these numbers work in your personal family budget or your family or your small business, the answer is obviously going to be no. Just a quick example of how we as Republicans, how we need to continue distinguishing ourselves from Democrats. You can see that the President's 2012 budget request, you'll see he's got revenue of $2.6 trillion, outlays of $3.7, so you have a $1 trillion deficit. And if you look at the House Republican plan, our proposed budget was $996 billion. And the President's plan is $1 trillion, so it's basically only a difference of $5 billion. So we didn't come up with a plan to balance the budget that showed that we're going to make those tough choices, because right now, through this recession, families and people in this room have made very difficult decisions every single day. And the other thing you can look at is the actual numbers will show that the amount of revenue that came in is actually less than what the President estimated would be in House Republicans, and the amount of revenues is actually higher as well. So we actually had less money coming in and more money going out than we initially projected. So some more numbers. If you look at the, what's really interesting is the White House has spreadsheets, and you have to take some time going through these spreadsheets, but they actually tell you, they make projections for the next 10 years, how much money you think they're going to raise, how much money they think they're going to spend. So they've said that they're going to raise about $2.8 trillion just in individual income taxes between 2012 and 2022, $2.8 trillion. But they say that the projected deficit is going to go down from, I've underlined it here in the middle of the page, from $901 billion this year to $704 billion in the next decade. So it only goes down by $196 billion, so about $200 billion. So the question is, how can you raise $2.8 trillion in revenue and only make the deficit go down by $200 billion? What happened to the other $2.6 trillion? Well, then you notice that it says the current cost of Obamacare is $2.6 trillion, and that's the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan office. They've estimated Obamacare to cost $2.6 trillion. So when I point out you have $2.8 trillion in revenue, you only pay the deficit down by $200 billion. What happened to the other $2.6 trillion? Well, that extra money is been reprogrammed for Obamacare. So there's extra revenue coming in, but we're not paying down the deficit. That money's being reprogrammed for other spending. And so that's what concerns me when we talk about, well, how does it affect us here at the county? If you read the proposal about the county council's proposal to raise taxes, they say, well, the tax is going to sunset in 7 years. And one thing that concerns me is if you look at a careful review, you'd be hard-pressed to find any tax anywhere that truly is sunset. When they say it's going to expire in this year, they end up always extending it. And I'll give you an example, and I'll bring an example to you next week, but we had Congress pass a telecommunications tax to fund the Mexican-American War more than a century ago. And that tax was in place for more than 100 years. They actually never repealed it. So that's an example where the government says this is going to sunset. Once they start that revenue stream and they've already obligated for certain infrastructure projects they're spending, the likelihood of that truly sunsetting is really next to nothing. So a quick look at revenue versus spending the last 10 years. You can just basically see, I want you to look at from 2009 when President Obama became president. You'll see that the spending was 3.7, but the total revenue is only 2.2. So you can see the deficits, basically, ever since he became president, we have $1 trillion+ deficits. And as long as he is president, I don't think we can necessarily expect that to go away. The question then is, we've all had debt at some point in our lives, through our business or personal life. I think there's a point above which you can never pay that debt down. So if you have $10,000 on a credit card, it's difficult, you can work on paying that off. When you start getting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, that debt just never can be repaid. So at some point we say, we're going to run $1 trillion deficits every single year of this time. $1 trillion more going up and coming in. At what point do you balance that ship? What point do you balance that budget? And there's a point I think that if we had elected another liberal in 2016, I think that we never balance the budget. I think we reached that point where the spending is always going to be more than the revenue coming in. Then we basically put ourselves on the path to looking like a European country with a high amount of spending and none of revenue to cover that. The next page just gives you an example, just based on current expenditures by 2025. All the revenue coming to the government will go towards Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, Social Security, and the interest on the debt. So basically, any other expenditures above that, for example, the fund, the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, whatever other expenses we have, that's all going to come from borrowed money. So we're going to have to borrow money to fund all of our other government expenditures because the three main entitlement programs are going to take up all of our revenue, and that's basically a little more than a decade. Again, that's if things don't change. So I want to talk to you a little more about demographics. It's really, really important to recognize that our country's changing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of we as Republicans have to make sure we understand how things are changing and our basic philosophy, the things we believe in as far as less government, limited amount of taxes, the freedom for you to operate your business, the freedom for you to decide how to raise your children, what things they should see, what things they shouldn't see, or what things should be taught in schools. Those are the things that we should talk about to these new voters. So if you look at this, basically, basically we have a larger pool of women and minority voters in the country, and younger voters as well, and that's the groups we need to keep reaching out to. And that's, for example, when we talk about our own county party here, we need to have a blog. We need to have a blog where we can have an update from Representative Adwater, giving us an update what happened in the House, from Deb, what happened after the monthly meeting of the West Metro Republican Women, give us a little tax update. If you look at website metrics, a blog is what actually helps drive most of the viewers to your website. We don't have a blog. That's what keeps people coming to the website and looking for fresh content. We're not on Facebook or Twitter. I know almost everyone here is probably on Facebook. Maybe not so much on Twitter, but we need to be on both. And I think we should look at how many people are on Facebook and Twitter in the Greenville and Charleston Republican parties, and let's say we want to beat those numbers. Whatever number of Facebook followers they have in Greenville, we want to beat them. We put that challenge out to our members, the people we know, and say we want to be the party that has the largest number of followers on Twitter and Facebook. So 2016 comes around, 2015, the next chairman comes around. When presidential candidates are saying, where should we visit, and their advisors are saying, well, you've got to go to Lexington County. That's the theme I had in my the other handout where I say the road to the White House goes to Lexington County. We need to lay the foundation now and help take the White House back in 2016. Look at the Obama team. They already started planning the 2012 re-election as soon as the 2008 election was over. And we are really still sitting back in our heels, and by the time the Romney campaign got going, it was really too late. They already had the boots on the ground. They already laid out their infrastructure investments in 8 federal states, and that's why they won the election. So I want to focus now and say what we need to do to reach out to young voters, to be relevant to the business community, reach out to younger voters. So if you look at these numbers, these numbers don't lie. What I want you to do is turn the page to look at this New York Times article. There's a suburban county in Washington, D.C. called Prince William County. It was a typical kind of Karl Rove, he calls these like suburban counties. It's thousands and thousands of Republican voters a decade ago. Bush won that county by something from 7 to 8 percentage points in 2000. Obama wins the county by 15 points in 2012. So in a decade, that flipped from a Republican county to a Democratic county. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen here in Lexington County, but it gives you an example of how the county changed so rapidly, and the Republican Party there wasn't prepared to make that kind of those rapid changes. It wasn't there to get out there, reach out to women voters, to reach out to younger voters, to be out there to be relevant. And in a decade, you see a county flip by 22 percentage points. So that's really remarkable to see just how quickly things can change. And you look at South Carolina, we have the fastest Hispanic growth in the nation from 2000 to 2010. We have an Indian American woman governor. We have an African American woman senator. So we have to recognize that our state's changing as well, and we have to be relevant to those changes and be there for those new communities and those new voters. One thing I want to talk to you about is core Republican principles. There's certain things that we weren't compromised. I said this before in our party meeting, that the left never compromises what they believe in, wrong in every issue. So why should we compromise when we know we're right? One of the things that we look at is, let's talk about the tax raises. So here's a quote by Speaker Boehner saying that he regretted what he said after the election. After the election, he basically said that we need to support a tax raise to help balance the budget. So he said that, I'm going to read this here real quick. He said, here's Boehner's quote. He said, looking back, what I should have done the day after the election was to make it clear the House has passed a bill to extend all the current tax rates. The House has passed a bill to replace the sequester with cuts in mandatory spending, and the Senate ought to do its work. So basically he was regretting what he had said. This is January 26th in his own newspaper. So if you turn the page, I had said in December 6, 2012, about 7 weeks before, and this is what, 7 weeks before, Boehner said this. Here's what Boehner said after Obama's election. We've got to cut spending, and I believe it is appropriate to put revenues on the table. Now, the revenues that we're putting on the table are going to come from, guess who? The rich. There are ways to limit deductions, close loopholes, and have the same people pay more of their money to the federal government without raising tax rates, which we believe will harm our economy. And then Boehner said we have a debt problem. And I said, as we do, the debt is not from a lack of revenue, it's from too much spending. And as I said before, this happened to George Bush. This happened to other Republicans. Whenever there's a deficit or some kind of fiscal crisis, we always try to exchange tax raises with spending cuts. The tax raises always come, but the spending cuts never do. So we have to learn from this and not keep getting burned, and recognize that we have to make these tough choices. And so I think that we have the county council saying we need to look at raising taxes. I don't have a knee-jerk reaction to automatically just say no. What I want to do is I want to look at the proposal. I want us to educate ourselves, and then when we come out with one-page synopsis of what the tax raise looks like, is it offset by spending cutting spending somewhere else? I don't know that. We need to stick to our corporate principles. One of our principles is that we don't support tax raises. We just don't support tax raises. And if they have infrastructure spending projects, then we need to lay them out to explain to us, to the business community, to the voters who have to pay for these tax raises. What is the spending going to? As I said before, the mayor already said that he's only running for one more term, so that's 4 more years. I don't know who the next mayor is going to be. We have a plan that says it's going to sunset in 7 years. I told you we had a telecommunications tax passed by Congress. It lasted for like 135 years before Congress actually repealed it. So I think we have to make sure we're relevant by sticking to our principles, core principles. We have to manage our tone better, be careful what we say and how we say it, because we should speak out against things that we should speak in favor of. We talk about tax cuts, we talk about tax raises, about spending cuts, what do we do on things? So I think there's a lot of things to talk about, and there's ways to do it through a blog, through social media. We have to have different events. We have to have social events. I think that sometimes people look at us as being too uptight. We should have a happy hour. Michael should pay for it.
No, you're Mike. This is Mike.
Both Michaels can have a happy hour. So we need to have happy hours. We need to have like a talk about 5K run walk and get our families out. We need to have consistent outreach to women voters. We need to reach out to Republican women. There's so many things we should be doing that we must be doing. So that's why I'm running for chairman. I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm going to work as hard as I can, reaching out to voters, trying to turn people out on March the 4th. What I'm asking for your help is please make calls if you believe in have the right ideas, that we can help bring our party together. As I said before, we have too many Republicans who will say, well, this representative, state senator, he voted 9 times correctly, but that 10th time, he voted on the issue that I may be fixated on, and I'm upset about, and I want to try to primary him. I want to purge the Republican Party. I want to purge ourselves of these rhinos. And ask the question, how many Democrats asked Bob Menendez to step down after he did what he did? Not a single person did. In fact, Harry Reid was at a press conference with him, and someone asked him about it. Reid said, well, just ask him about it. I don't know anything about it. So we don't need to keep circling the wagons and some kind of circular firing squad and complain about other Republicans. We can be focused on Democrats and liberals and defeating liberals and defeating Democrats and focusing on winning that election. 2016 was an R versus a D. Our focus is that the R should win. Because if we have 8 more years for another liberal Democrat, 16 years of a Democrat in the White House, I just don't think fiscally we're going to survive and make it. I really believe that passionately. I'm not saying that because I think maybe you want to hear that. I really believe that if we have another 8 years of a Democrat in the White House, looking at these numbers, the numbers are only going to get worse. So I think it's really time to take our country back, to lay a foundation now for our county party to get stronger, to become united. So going forward, I want to lay the foundation so the next chairman in April 2015, the presidential cycle, is going to be empowered to really help take our party forward and to make sure that what we need to do to win back the White House, we do at the county level. Chairman Chad Connolly noted that we picked up 2 House seats, we picked up a Senate seat. Most importantly, we picked up Katrina Shealy in the Senate. I think she was a great chairman. She worked really hard. She's doing the right things. She's been very involved with our party, so I think we're really proud of her. We have Indian American, we have Nikki Haley as governor, we have Tim Scott as our senator. We have some great people who are really passionate about public service and serving us. I think we need to support our Republican team. And that's really my focus, is to be united. And really want to do is to make our county party relevant. I'll give you an example. I went to Ohio, Cincinnati, Hamilton County. The Republican Party headquarters, the county headquarters, were bigger than our state party headquarters. And that was really an eye-opening moment when I came in. They have a boardroom, a conference room that's like half the size of this restaurant. I couldn't believe that you had a county party of that kind of size, that kind of magnitude, and that kind of stature, where presidential candidates would want to go to that one county. When I was in Iowa, I met people who met President Bush 10 times over breakfast. And I was in Dallas County, Polk County. These are really important counties. If you're a candidate in Iowa, you want to go to that county. I want those advisors, and I met with presidential advisors and candidates. I want them to say, we've got to go to Lexington County. I don't want them to say, you got to go to Greenville, you got to go to Charleston. And you can stop out in Lexington for a fundraiser at this XYZ's house because he's really wealthy and very funny. I want them to come to meet people like us here in Elizabeth's Thicket. That's what I want, because I saw that in Iowa. And so I want to have that relevance, that kind of power to say, if you quick look in the main Republican parties, the county organizations in South Carolina, I want them to say, these guys have the largest network. They have the most followers on Twitter. They have the most followers on Facebook. They got an active blog. They got this great website. They're really active. And this is an active, county organization. And you have to go there to be with those people. I want us to have that same relevance that they have in the battleground states, Ohio and Iowa. I don't want to overlook us and say, we're a red state, we're going to stop off there. I want them to say, you got to go there, you got to campaign there, you got to earn our votes. And I think 2016 is going to be great. You got Marco Rubio, and look at the media. I mean, the media criticized Bobby Jindal when he made his response to the State of the Union, and then the same thing for Marco Rubio. What's amazing is Wolf Blitzer actually asked the question whether or not he might have destroyed his political career by drinking some water during his speech. He wasn't drinking Jack Daniels. He was sipping water. He was getting worked up. I mean, if you're talking about the Obama agenda, you're going to get worked up. You're going to have to have a sip of water. So, but you can see, when Joe Biden says something silly every single week, no one ever questions whether or not he really should be vice president of the United States. So the media is not on our side. Liberals aren't on our side. So we as Republicans shouldn't be fighting one another when we already have our backs against the wall and trying to fight everyone else. So that's really important to be united as a team, saying we can take on the media, we can take on the left. The only way to do that is be one team going forward. So what I would do is I want to thank you all for the time. I am going to campaign really hard. I appreciate, I'm going to try to bring out next week before the March 4th meeting, just like a one-pager with my background. Maybe each of you can take 5 or 6 copies, hand them out to precinct reorg, and just say, here's someone running for chair, and I think you do a good job bringing us together. There's a lot of ideas, and consider voting for on April 13th. I would appreciate that if you would hand that out, and to come out on March 4th, of course, and to please come out and to just sign up to be a county delegate and to support me April 13th, because I really think it's really important for us to come together and to really be united, and to really, again, be relevant. We as a party have to be relevant to the business community and to citizens, everyday constituents. I think we have to start doing that at the county level and just expand that. So 2016, if it's whoever it is, Marco Rubio, whoever it is, we laid that foundation to be successful and take back the White House.
Wow, that was really good.
So any questions?
Man. That was really good. I was impressed. That worked before. It wasn't even more
But
than
Dino,
time.
they can call you ahead of time, anytime, right? If they got
Call,
questions.
email anytime. If you have, my email is really simple. I don't know if you have a little page here. It's just, can I grab this real quick? It's just dino.teppara@gmail. dino.teppara@gmail. And my number is 467-2130.